guys, so EQ, it's one of the most crucial components of making any good song sound great. But a lot of beginning mix engineers make the same critical mistake that results in their mixes sounding muddy, even phasey, and possibly distorted. The key to a great mix is emphasizing the right frequencies, but that might not always mean boosting them. Let me explain. All right, so I've got two rhythm guitar tracks here, panned left and right. We're just gonna focus on these red tracks for now. And then I have a vocal track down the center. So most people, when they start out mixing, they're unfamiliar with what the specific frequencies sound like. So the instinct is going to be to solo a track. Let me unclick those three. To solo a track, pop open the graphic EQ and kind of play around, cut and boost certain frequencies, which is great because that allows you to hear, what 1K sounds like, what 200 hertz sounds like, etc. The issue they run into when EQing in solo is you're not going to be hearing how that track is sounding with the overall mix, how that's meshing or clashing with the other tracks, especially tracks that share a similar frequency range. I've chosen to start with guitar and vocals because these instruments share similar primary frequencies. And when you mix in solo, you can end up boosting a lot of the same frequencies, which ends up with your mix sounding muddy, distorted, or even possibly phasey. Let's take a look here at the guitars first. I'm just gonna solo these guitars. It's the same guitar, just panned left and right. And I've boosted, as you can see here, about 980, 1000 hertz, 6 dB. I'm gonna play that back for you real quick. Cool, sounds nice, it's crisp. That little boost is giving a bit of a bite to the kind of rock guitar we have there. Let's move over to the vocals and hear what we're working with there.
Everything, I want everything. I don't care if I make it all alive.
So again, boosted right around the same area. In isolation, they sound good. When we put them together, though, let's listen back.
Give me everything, I want everything. I don't care if I make it all alive. I want everything, I don't care, I want it on those I break my floor.
So you're not really hearing too much of a separation. You do have the stereo separation thanks to the panning, but it's kind of blurring together a little bit, not sounding ideal. Let's scroll up here to these three green tracks. This is exactly the same thing we were working with down here. However, the EQ settings are going to be a little bit different. And let's take a listen to what we have up here.
I want everything, I don't care if I make it all alive. I want everything, I don't care, I want it on those I break my floor. Give me everything.
All right, so you can tell that the guitar sounds a little bit different. It doesn't quite have that same exact bite, but it's sitting nicely with some drive. And the important thing is that 1K frequency that I've actually gone in here and pulled out is now leaving all of this room for the vocals to really shine through. It sounds like the guitars are sitting comfortably in their spots in either side of the mix, and the vocals are dead center. So this version sounds a lot cleaner. Both the guitars and the vocals sit nicely in their own designated space in the mix. They're not competing for bandwidth at the same frequency. Giving instruments their own, little pockets results in a tighter, more professional sounding mix. It also allows you to push the mix volume quite a bit further. Now, why is that? Say you keep both the guitars and the vocals boosted at 3 dB. Now we're about 6 dB above baseline. And once you start pushing the overall volume of the mix, you're going to run into clipping issues at 1000 hertz a lot quicker than if the vocals are sitting nicely boosted 3 dB at 1K and the guitars are ducked, a dB or two at the same level. You can push the overall volume a lot further because the guitars are pushing through at different frequencies and allowing a little more room for the vocals to push through at the 1K, which is where, the vocals are going to be sounding the best and cutting through the mix the most. Let's do one more example and then we'll wrap up. Here I've got as you could probably guess, for the low end kick and bass. I've done the same thing. The green tracks here, I've EQ'd them together. They feed off one another. The kick drum is boosted around 50 hertz, and then it's ducked here around 150 hertz. Pop open the bass, I've ducked that a little bit around the 50 hertz range, and then I've boosted it at 100 hertz. So essentially I'm giving, the 80 to 100 hertz range to the bass, while I'm cutting some from the bass at the 50K range to allow the kick to punch through. On the red track down here, I've just boosted them both at 50. And again, this is, if you're just starting out, where you might make this critical mistake when you're mixing in solo. You boost 50 hertz on a kick drum, it's going to thump, especially if you have a sub. It's going to sound great. If then you boost 50 hertz on the bass in solo, fat subs, sounds good. But let's hear what happens if I play that back with them both boosted at 50 hertz. Now, if you're listening on a phone, you're probably not going to hear that. Headphones are going to be a little better. If you have, studio monitors and even better a sub, take a listen. I'll play that one more time, and then I'm going to play the alternate version where the kick and the bass have their own pockets. So if you play that back, if you listen back to that on a bump in sound system with a sub, you're going to hear that that's night and day. So key takeaway here, when you're EQing, don't do it in solo. And when you're working with tracks that have similar sound profiles like kick and bass or vocals and guitar, keyboard and organ, really focus on hearing where you're going to boost and where you're going to cut from each, so that you're creating a symbiotic relationship between the tracks versus a competitive one. You want them working with each other, each track in its own lane. You don't want them all competing for that same airspace, that same bandwidth within the same thin frequency range. So there you have it. Mixing in solo, bad idea. You can always play around with EQ in solo mode, but you never want to have that be your finalized EQ settings without hearing that track back with the other tracks that share similar frequencies and with the mix as a whole. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
There's a life worth slaying. Free and liberated.